Hello there, you beautiful soul, and welcome back to another segment of Culture Talks with your host and founder of Cultured Society. Through this season, I have found that we are going through so many healing transformations, and I believe that it's so important not only to talk about cultural philosophies and experiences and healing processes, but also to talk about the various processes that we go through when we are healing. And everyone's process is so different, but yet we can come together and have a conversation about what we're going through to have a better and deeper understanding, not only of ourselves, but of each other. And through this process of communicating what we are experiencing or what we've experienced, we're able to really allow ourselves to go through the process of healing with ease. And so today I am back with Bonnie Moehle, who is a self realization coach, published author, and public speaker with over 20 years of experience helping people in areas of personal development, spirituality, and executive coaching, among other areas of our lives. Because we are a mind, body, and spirit connection. And oftentimes when we're dealing with issues of, in our careers or in our personal journeys, I mean, literally it kind of all goes hand in hand, right? So it's really important for us to understand where we are and to be able to have these conversations openly. And if we're not able to have these conversations with people that we trust in our personal space, that we're able to go to someone externally that has a lot of experience in these areas and that can help us really activate some deeper issues that we might be experiencing that can cause a lot of external issues in our physical health, in our relationships, in our ways of communicating, that may cause a lot of resistance, and we're not able to really move forward and fully understand where we're at. So I am so honored and so grateful that Bonnie has come uh, in this space in the month of March to be able to help us walk through these experiences that I'm sure a lot of people, even though they may not realize it, may be going through in this time and phase of our life. So thank you so much, Bonnie, for joining us today.
Oh, such a pleasure, Rebecca. I always love being in your presence.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, we are talking today about attachment bonds. And we are talking about how, oftentimes attachments can lead to conflict, resistance, external behaviors that can cause, communication issues, relationship issues, codependency, abusive behavior, and boundary issues that can cause deeper issues with an insecure attachment. So I want to hand the mic over to Miss Bonnie Moehle to talk to us about some ways that we can work through these unhealthy patterns with attachment.
Okay, I love talking about attachments. I have had clients over the years just learning about attachments and being aware of them say it has changed their relationships, it's changed their lives. But I think I wanted to start out with something that somebody said to me many years ago before I even started on my journey. He looked at me one day and he was studying Buddhism. And he said, Bonnie, just say yes. And I remember when he said that, thinking to myself, what do you mean just say yes? What if you say yes and then you don't get what you want? And what if you just say yes and things don't work out? And what if you say yes and things fall apart? And what if you just say yes and then you're the doormat and they win and you lose? And that's where the mind wants to go. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in talking about attachments. But what I came to realize is that really that's the only option we have
Mhm.
unless we want to be in pain. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to reflect a little bit on attachments. And, to me, attachments are maybe expectations on steroids. So, because that's really what it is, it's expectations. But the way that I like to define attachments are a vision of how you believe someone or something should be.
Mm.
Now, unfortunately, the world does not always cooperate with our vision of how we think someone or some things should be. And if we don't know how to let go of our attachments, if we're so, held on tight to our attachments, then we end up in pain. We end up disappointed. We end up angry. We end up feeling not enough. We end up projecting externally onto an external point. You made me feel this way. And if you didn't do that, then I wouldn't feel this way. And this is what happens when we have attachments. And one of the things that I've realized about, through self-observation about attachments is the reason we're so stuck to our attachments is because every attachment has a story that goes with it. So if we take something simple, like you said you would call me at 6 o'clock and you didn't call me until 6:30. The pain is not because they called you at 6:30. The pain is not only because of the attachment, but because of the story that goes along with the attachment and empowers the attachment. So the story might be something like, well, if you didn't call me at 6 o'clock, you don't respect me. And if you didn't call me at 6 o'clock, I'm not a priority to you and you don't care enough about me. And so with everything that we're attached to, there's always a story. It can be something as simple as the traffic should be going faster than it is. And why do we get so upset about how the traffic's going? Because there's a story. These people can't drive and I'm never going to get there on time. And then they're not going to like me when I get there because I'm late. And so every attachment has a story that goes with it. And particularly in our relationships, we have big time stories. And, if you loved me, you would show up like this. And if you cared about me, you would do this. The truth is every single person on this planet is showing up the best they can with the tools they have so far, right? Based on their conditioning, based on their experiences, maybe some karma they brought in with them, probably some karma they brought in with them. And so this whole idea that we have, and one of the big reasons we have so much difficulty in relationships is because we think that if you loved me, you would change. The truth is if I loved you, I would accept you as you are rather than needing you to change. And everybody's just being the best them they know how to be with the tools they have. So they can't change unless they say, I'm in pain and I'd like to do some inner work to change that thing. Oftentimes the things that we want to change about another, they're perfectly happy with, or they're perfectly miserable and they're happy being miserable with it, but they're not ready to change it. So what's our only option? We have to accept it. So now going back to defining an attachment, having an attachment, one that doesn't come to be, is the same thing as hating what is. And hating what is would be like me looking out the window at this beautiful Aleppo pine outside my window and being angry because it's not an oak. That's hating what is. Hating what is, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Hating what is like being angry because it's sunny and warm or hot in the summer in Arizona. That's just what is. But this is what we do all the time. We hate what is. We hate the things that we can't control. And in doing that, we end up, as I said, disappointed, angry, in pain. And then what do? We take it out on the people in our lives. So I always like to paint this picture of sitting in a park, and in front of you is a pond, and swimming in the pond is a duck and a fish. Now I'm going to ask you, Rebecca, would you be angry at a duck if it wasn't behaving like a fish?
No.
And whenever I present it that way, I always get the same kind of response, a little bit of a giggle. Of course not. Why would I be angry at a duck if it wouldn't behave like a fish? When we have attachments that aren't met, the ones that trigger these uncomfortable feelings in us, it's because we're wanting a duck to be a fish. Whether it's wanting traffic to be different than it is, wanting a person to be different than they are, we're hating what is. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop hating what is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the hardest things to do. Wouldn't you agree? Because oftentimes we are, like you said earlier, so conditioned, right, to believe that things have to go a certain way, especially when it comes to relationships. Like
Mhm.
we expect people to show up as a certain person because that's who we are. But
Yes.
it's so important, especially understanding unconditional love, right? That
Mhm.
unconditional love, we can't put conditions on a person that's outside of ourselves. And even when it's ourselves.
Well, and so true. We want to accept ourselves. We want to accept others. Real love, whether it's of yourself or someone else, is not about changing them or
No.
wanting them to be different or hating how they are. So, I want to talk a little bit about what it means to accept, because acceptance is the cure for attachments. And so, I have a lot of clients. I work with a lot of business owners. I'm a member of BNI, Business Network International. And so, as a result, I have exposure to a lot of business owners and I work with a lot of business owners. And I hear something like this on a regular basis: Bonnie, I'm so stressed out. Well, why are you stressed out? Well, because my employee Bob isn't doing his job. And if Bob would just do his job, then I wouldn't feel this way. And my answer to that is, wrong answer. It's not Bob that's causing your stress. It is the attachment to how Bob should be and the story that goes with it that is creating the stress. So when you have a Bob in your life or somebody in a relationship, you really only have four choices. So here they are. The first choice: you can hate how Bob is and constantly be wishing Bob would be different and saying things to Bob to try to manipulate him and make him feel bad so that he'll do things to change and make you happy. But we get nowhere with that one, because for one thing, it triggers some of Bob's insecurities and makes Bob less effective. And this is just not how we help people make changes. And unfortunately, oh, there goes my doggy in the background. Unfortunately, um, this is the most popular choice. Most people choose, when somebody isn't the way they want them to be, to hate how it is, try to get them to change, to say nasty things, try to manipulate them. And once you're really aware of this, you can even observe it in yourself. I remember first becoming aware of it and observing myself wanting the people in my life to be different than they were, and saying things that to try to make them feel bad so that they would change and be the way I wanted them to be. Okay. Or giving them an opinion. And the opinion was an opinion which really had the agenda of trying to get you to change. And again, this is not love. Acceptance is love. So you have a Bob. What's your second choice with Bob? Your second choice is accept Bob as he is. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when we move into acceptance, and by the way, we'll talk in a minute about what real acceptance is, but when we move into acceptance, it's like this miracle happens. All of a sudden you see what's right rather than what's wrong, and what you have rather than what you don't have, and what their strengths are rather than their weaknesses. This is what comes with acceptance. So now you're Bob's employer, you're in acceptance of him. All of a sudden now you see what Bob has to offer. And as a result, you give Bob jobs that enhance his strengths, and Bob becomes the best employee you ever had. So that's your second option. Here's your third. Third one is the same as the second. You accept him as he is. You start to see what his beauty and strengths and gifts are. You give him jobs that only enhance those. And he does really well. But you realize, for what my organization needs and for what I'm paying Bob, he's just not a good fit for the job. So now you fire Bob. But if you fire Bob after moving into acceptance and really seeing his strengths and giving him an opportunity to be the best he can be, what happens is you fire him in good conscience. You know that you're doing the right thing. And oftentimes Bob will quit before you fire him, because he'll realize, my boss is a really great guy, but I just can't meet up to what he needs in order to run his business. And so that's your third option. Acceptance does not always mean that you're stuck or that you have to keep something in your life. And so I wanted to be clear on that. The fourth option is fire Bob. But if you fire Bob without accepting Bob, guess who your next employee is?
It's going to be the same thing over again.
Yeah, it's Bob. It's Bob. I call it Bob 2 or Bob TOO. Either way it works. Bob number 2, Bob also. So, but you just get another Bob. And why? Because letting go of attachments, also known as acceptance, is one of the most important lessons that we're here to learn. And until we do, the universe just keeps throwing opportunities in our face to accept the things that we have no control over and that we can't change. Now, the difficulty with acceptance is that people have it confused with resignation.
Mm.
So they think if I accept, they're going to win, I'm going to lose. If I accept, I'm the doormat. If I accept, I won't get where I want to go or I won't get what I want. And that's because, again, so many people misinterpret the word acceptance as resignation. I'm resigned to being stuck in this space. But I want to get really clear that acceptance and resignation are not the same thing. And I want to show you the difference in terms of how they affect us. So I'm going to do a little visual here. So say you have a goal to get over here. And you're walking down the street and you're walking down the street and you hit a wall. Try to move the wall, push the wall, knock the wall over. Wall won't go anywhere. Now you think you're in acceptance, but you're really in resignation when you do this. Okay, fine. I guess I'm never going to get my goal. I accept that. There's a wall here. I accept that. Fine. Now, first of all, now what are you thinking about your goal? Go ahead, Rebecca. You can answer. What are you thinking about your goal?
Well, the wall's not going to go anywhere, and I can either
Okay,
find my
well, you're getting ahead of me. So in this example, what I'm thinking about the goal is, oh, I'm never going to get there. I'm
okay.
never going to get there. Okay. So, and I'm standing on this side of the wall, and all I'm focusing on is hating the wall and how I'm never going to get my goal. So that's exactly what I get. We reap what we sow. What we put out, we get back. And if this is how we're thinking, that's exactly what we experience. And this is why we think resignation holds us stuck. But let's now do acceptance. So now I have a goal to get over here, and I'm walking down the street and I hit a wall. And I try to move the wall and push the wall and knock the wall over, and the wall won't go anywhere. So now, totally different energy. You know what? I'm still going to get my goal. Apparently, this just isn't the way. That's okay. I accept that. Now, what's your thought about the goal?
There's always another way around it.
Yes, I'm going to get it. And what's your energy like over here?
Because there's less resistance when you're able to find another solution.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happens. When we approach it through acceptance, we're still going to get the goal. Energy is high. All of a sudden, an epiphany happens. And what's the epiphany?
There's
Over
always
there. And you look over there, and you know what's over there? A ladder, a wall, the end of the wall, or a ladder. What did I say? A ladder, a wrecking ball, the end of the wall, a way around the wall, a way over the wall.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So acceptance opens up this space where all of a sudden you have answers, you have knowing, you have creativity. Versus resignation, when we're hating what is, when we're saying no to what is, we are stuck because all we're doing is focusing on, I'm not going to get that, and I'm hating this thing right here. Okay. So, one of the things that I want to get clear with the listener is acceptance is not defeat. And you don't lose when you accept. You might have to make a choice, but you have the choice. And because you moved completely into acceptance, the choice is clear and creative and beautiful. Okay. So, anything that you would like to add to that or share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love having these conversations because this is, when we're going through self assessment and self realization, we recognize that all of us have those issues, right? I've had issues with not accepting what is, and also with really attaching myself to an outcome that we oftentimes create in our head, right? And so
Mhm.
when going back to what we talked about last week, when in the importance of presence, and really understanding that everyone is having their own experience, and that these experiences will usually show up for us in a way for us to come back to the present moment and to find
Mhm.
a solution. And there's always a solution. And oftentimes when we're creating conflicts and resistance, it's because our human brain starts to overcomplicate what is.
Well, and get caught up in that story about the meaning. And, it's really interesting about when you look at the meanings of things that cause us pain. The pain wants to be fed. So it will continue to give negative meaning because that's what feeds the pain. And so anytime we have resistance or we are hating what is, that pain arises. And then what ends up happening? That pain wants to be fed. So it keeps looking for more and more story and more thought to continue to feed itself. Okay. And so this is what we do. I wanted to share with you another little story about attachments and why letting go of them is so beneficial. My daughter years ago was dating a very nice young man, but she had been dating him for about 7 years. And one day she called me up and she said, Mom, I know you're all about acceptance, but I'm concerned that if I accept him as he is, then it won't work out. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to suggest that you do. First of all, be in acceptance, because when you're in acceptance, you feel at peace and at ease. And that may change the nature of your relationship right there. Instead of always wishing something would be different, being in acceptance will affect how you feel, how you react, how you respond, and create a more peaceful place that you're coming from in the relationship. And again, may change the dynamic between the two of you. I also said to her, the other thing that happens when you accept him as he is yes, the miracle happens. You see what's right and what he has and what his strengths are, but you also see who he is. And I know this is true about so many relationships because I've been working with people for 21 years on relationships, that oftentimes we are basing our relationship on hope or potential. And we stay in unhealthy relationships for long periods of time based on the fact that, well, I hope he'll change, or maybe he'll change, or maybe she'll be different. And maybe, if she was only different, then we would be good because this is good and that's good, but that isn't good. So if she would just change that. And so that hope prevents us from really seeing who that person really is. But when we move into acceptance, we see who they are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what's beautiful about that is when we can truly see who they are, that is when and only when we can really make a wise choice as to whether or not this is the person I want to stay with. And again, you always have choices. What acceptance does is it gives you the clarity to be able to make that choice. Good.
Yes, absolutely.
The third thing I told her is when you accept him as he is, he'll feel accepted. How do people show up in a relationship when they feel accepted?
They show up as themselves and the best part of themselves.
Yeah, they're more authentic, right? More comfortable being them. So she kind of took all of that in, and she did end up leaving him. And I think the thing that impacted her the most was, for all these years that they had been dating, there were a lot of good things, but there were some habits that he just was not interested in changing. That once she accepted, she realized they're not going to go away, and that's not okay for me. And it wasn't an angry thing and it wasn't an upset thing. It was just a clarity thing. And so, one of the things that I love about acceptance or letting go of attachments is that you get clarity and you know how to proceed and you know the answers and you know you have the creativity.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that it's important to all understand, because I'm going through a continuous evolution. And I think it's so important for us to recognize that we do as human beings. It's a never ending. and especially people that are into personal development, right? And
Mhm.
I know I recognize that I have a very big and great potential, and I recognize that within myself. And so as I'm continuously learning, I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm transforming. And so when you recognize that even you have the potential to be that way, that other people do too. And so oftentimes when we're in relationships, we will always um it's almost as though we're holding this expectation for someone to be the same when oftentimes not everybody feels that way. And
Mhm.
then two, we're always holding people for who they were when they are changing. And so
True.
that's the importance also of accepting what is recognizing that people are constantly changing. And even when you are in a relationship for over 20, 30 years, right? That person that you married in the beginning is not supposed to stay the same. We're
Right.
constantly evolving. And if we can accept that too, and we
Mhm.
can adapt and change together and go through that evolution and continue to accept each other for what we are, right? We
Mhm.
tend to lose that suffering as well. And we just kind of go with the flow of things. And that's one of the it's one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn through my human experience with my evolution is recognizing that not everybody will allow themselves to go through that evolution. But then when you are aligning with people who are going through that evolution, that you just accept them through their evolution and you love them unconditionally through that process.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. And also, you may be with somebody who's also evolving at the same time, but we evolve at different paces and we have different things from our histories that come up and need to be healed and affect us in different ways. So, yes, acceptance is really huge. And, one of the things that I find helpful in being able to accept, especially when it comes to relationship, is if I make a commitment to no more finger pointing. So, what would that mean? A commitment to no longer finger pointing. Somebody who's very in their ego, if somebody that they're in relationship with says or does something that they don't like, they would point a finger and say, "You made me feel bad, and you need to change so that I can feel better." And that's the finger point. But once you start to understand and add acceptance into your life and let go of the attachments and know that they're all just about your own story that you're making up in your head anyway, instead of the finger pointing, it turns into, wow, my spouse or my partner or my significant other just said something to me and it brought something up to the surface. Gee, I wonder what I need to take a look at so that I can heal. And it's a completely different way of looking at things. And when we do the finger pointing, we become a victim. And the reason we become a victim is because the only way we can feel better is if they change. And that's not going to happen. Versus if we stop finger pointing and instead, Byron Katie always says, take your finger and make a U turn. If you make a U turn and point it back at yourself, then you can say, okay, why did I react? And what is it about that reaction that's coming up to be healed? And how can I heal it? And that becomes really important when it comes to letting go of your attachments and accepting, is to stop doing the finger pointing and thinking that somebody else made me feel the way I feel. No, they didn't. Your thoughts about and your reactions to and your stories that you're creating are making you feel what you feel. And so when you can take a look at that and have a really high level of awareness, why am I feeling so attached? Why am I so upset that I didn't get what I want or they didn't show up the way I wanted to? And then go in, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself? And take a look at that story because it's just a story.
Absolutely. And at any given point, we can change that story. We can change the trajectory of our relationships, especially if we do have to understand that relationships are in everything that we do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a romantic relationship, but most importantly, you're in the relationship with yourself, and that one is most important. And
Mm-hmm.
once you recognize that the relationship with yourself is healthy or it's going on that trajectory, you're able to really unfold in other relationships, like your business relationships, you know, your romantic relationships, your friendships. I mean, because everything is a relationship.
Yes, very true. And you know what? I love that everything is a relationship, because what mirrors us to us better than a relationship? When we're in relationship, when I first heard that, by the way, a relationship mirrors you to you, I always thought, I wasn't quite sure how to interpret that. So I interpreted it as, okay, so that means that if I see them being nasty, then I must be nasty too. And that's not really exactly how that mirror works. The mirror works through the reaction and response to their behavior. And so, however they're behaving, you can observe it without it having to do anything with you. But if you have a reaction to it, that's the part that you want to take a look at. Why am I reacting to their behavior? Am I judging them? Do I feel inadequate around them? Am I hating what is? Do I have an attachment to them being different than they are? Is that bringing up some past resistance or old stories? Does that create some kind of a fear of the future? Why am I reacting? And so when you can do that, instead of pointing a finger, then you become empowered, because now you can work through what is coming up for you. Whereas, without with the finger pointing, all you're doing is wanting them to be different so that you can feel better.
That's so good. That's so good. So, can you walk us through a way to have a better understanding of ourselves and even like a lot of our triggers that can come up when we're dealing with maybe external factors like other people that uh, can cause those types of attachments to maybe put us in a state where we are hurting ourselves? Like, how can we get through those processes where we are more self aware and
Mhm.
recognize those attachments before they become a trauma?
Well, so first of all, awareness is so key. It is absolutely huge. We have to become self aware in order to do any of this work. What I always recommend to, especially when I'm working with a very new client who maybe doesn't even have any education on being self-aware, is I teach them to do an affirmation. And just start by doing an affirmation. And what's the affirmation? I am aware. I am noticing all my self-talk. I easily and effortlessly catch any of my emotions, my feelings, and all the thoughts that go along and correspond to them. And so I have them say that affirmation at first. And what happens, we have the ability to program our subconscious mind. And so if you program your subconscious mind with an affirmation like that, the next thing you know, all of a sudden you are catching yourself. You're catching the feelings, the uncomfortable feelings. You're catching the thoughts that correspond to them. And that's when you're able to begin to work through how you're feeling. I like to make it a little step-by-step process. So the first thing that I do once I am aware that I'm feeling uncomfortable, I have an attachment, I'm feeling some pain, is just like what we talked about in our last episode when it comes to grief. The first thing that I like to do is kind of acknowledge that discomfort as a message, because that is what it is. The discomfort is there to tell you that there's something that you need to take a look at. The discomfort isn't there because of some external force. The discomfort isn't there because he said this and she did that. The discomfort is always there because of what's coming up for you to heal. Okay. So the first thing that I always do is, okay, I actually have a little conversation with it. I call it my internal teacher. And I say, I hear you, internal teacher. Thank you for getting my attention with this pain. I got it. Okay. I need to do something. The next thing that I do, and I find this really helpful, is to recognize what are the thoughts that are swirling around in my head that are corresponding to this pain. And, as I mentioned earlier, when we've got that emotional pain, thoughts become even more predominant because the pain wants to feed itself. And how does it feed itself? It feeds itself with more thought, more negative thought, more of a story that we're telling ourselves. And so the second step is, and all it is really is about awareness and presence, is to recognize, what am I thinking that is corresponding with this feeling? And sometimes right there, that sometimes just shifts me out of the whole thing, because it makes me laugh. Sometimes, and again, I've been doing this long enough that when I notice my thoughts, now I laugh at them. But, sometimes I'll be saying to myself, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm feeling like this. Look what I'm thinking. And then I'll laugh at myself. So the other thing that I like to do as part of this step process is I like to ask myself, why am I thinking this way? Why is this coming up to be healed? And, again, I misinterpreted that in the old days as getting into some deep psychology and digging up, your mother said this when you were 5, and this is why it's coming up. To me, it kind of boils down to 5 things in terms of why we have the thoughts that we do and the emotions we do. 1, because we think we're not enough. If you think you're not enough, you take things personally, you become defensive, you need validation, you misperceive comments as criticisms. So that may be one reason why we're reacting, is we're taking things personally, which means, what do I have to heal? I have to heal my self-love. Now, we're going to be working on that, the two of us together, and in our future talks. So the second reason that we have pain, or we react and respond the way we do, is because we have attachments and we don't want to let them go because we're really stuck in this story. Third reason is because we keep going into the past, and we're always pulling from our past experiences, bringing them into the present moment. And especially when it's an uncomfortable emotion, what are we drawing from? All the negative experiences, right? Because again, that emotion wants to keep feeding itself with more negativity, right? So that's what we're drawing from in the past. Well, that last time this happened, last time we did this, this happened, so it's going to happen again. And we're bringing that into our current situation. Again, causing pain. Why does it cause pain? Because it's not serving us. It's just a little story in our head. The fourth reason why we have pain is because we are projecting into the future and fearing it. This is anxiety. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this doesn't happen? What if this doesn't work out? What if? But projecting into the future, we just made it up. It doesn't exist. Past doesn't exist either. Right now, past doesn't exist. Past is gone, it's over, it's done. Even if it was 2 minutes ago or 3 seconds ago, it's gone, it's done, it doesn't exist. Why go there? Future, you made it up in your head based on your past. Doesn't exist. We don't want to go there either. And the reason that future projection creates so much anxiety is because the anxiety is like the messenger telling you, get out of the future, get out of the future, get out of the future. All you're going to do is create things that you don't want, because that's what you're thinking about and projecting into and putting out there. Be in the present. The fifth reason that we react, respond, and behave the way we do is because we're not in integrity with ourselves. We say yes when we mean no. We want to please everybody because we're afraid they won't like us, which really kind of ties back to number 1, the I'm not good enough. So where I'm getting at with all of this is, as I go through my own little process, say I have an attachment and I'm starting to feel disappointed and then angry, those are kind of the way the emotions come up. First I'm disappointed, then I'm angry, then I want to try to call somebody and manipulate them and get them to change so I can get what I want. But it's the awareness. And so I catch it and I say, okay, I hear you, internal teacher. I'm feeling this way because how I'm reacting is not serving me. Okay, well, what's going on in my head that's perpetuating this feeling? Oh, and then I'll identify it. And I'll identify what the story is. Oh, they don't love me. They don't care about me. That's why they didn't call me. And then I'll identify, well, why am I feeling this way? I have an attachment. Oh. Now, what I think is important about identifying that I have an attachment in this particular example is because then I know what I need to heal. Now, I know for myself, and I'm guessing, Rebecca, you've had experience with this too, is that it's very, very difficult to shift what you're thinking to reprogram some of the subconscious programming if you're holding the emotion in your body.
Mm, yes, absolutely.
So the
And I mean, if you don't mind interrupting,
oh, go ahead.
because we just talked about this before I pressed record, is that through the self assessment process, and when you're experiencing these relationship experiences, not only when you look at yourself in the mirror, right? And most importantly, because I've gone through a very long process of self healing. And I've allowed myself to go through the process alone, where I've experienced a lot of solitude through my transitions. And I expressed to Bonnie in one of the conversations that we had prior to our call was that I've learned the process of self acceptance and even not uh, not expecting other people to validate you through these experiences. And this is one of the hardest processes to go through, especially when you haven't had the best experiences in relationships. But these are always opportunities for us to self assess when these things are coming up. And I'm telling you that it's a never ending process because when we go into new experiences with other people, because everybody is having their own experience and we can never, and that's the hardest thing to do, is to not take things personal. But when these things do come up for you and it brings up an emotional response, the best thing to do is looking at yourself in the mirror. And one of my practices every morning is waking up in gratitude, one, for my day, but also looking at myself in the mirror, facing myself, because that's the person that we have to face all day, every day. And to accept yourself, to love yourself, and affirm words, beautiful words that will empower you, and not expecting anybody else to do that for you. Because when you operate through that, like in that process through the day, you are able to have relationships, better relationships that are more easy. And even if they're not, you recognize that it has nothing to do with you. And the only person that you can control and your reactions is you.
So true. And I love what you're saying about self acceptance. I know in my own process and journey, I used to be really, really, really hard on myself. And I thought that taking responsibility for your stuff that was coming up to be healed meant to beat yourself up.
Mhm.
And what I learned is that beating yourself up is just like putting fluid on the fire. It does not actually help the situation. It makes it worse. However, if you can shift it into accepting yourself, then all of a sudden you open up this space for healing. And one of the things about acceptance and one of the benefits is that through that acceptance, you can then move into what you're feeling and really embrace it, really feel it, really be present to it. And what happens is that all of a sudden, through that presence, the feeling either lifts or it's there, but it's not consuming you. Okay. And so you can maybe still feel it, but because you've been present, number one, you're no longer caught in that story. And so you might feel the feeling, but you're no longer caught in the story. And that way you can move forward. And one of the things that I like to do is I do like to change my story. So after I've spent some time in acceptance and really embracing what I'm feeling, I change my story. And my story, if I notice that self-love is tied into, or a lack of self-love is tied in to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, part of my new story is talking to myself about how I am good enough and why I'm good enough and how I am enough. If an attachment is tied into why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, then I accept. And I kind of do a little mini serenity prayer there. Accept the things that I cannot change. And I trust that everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. And if it's causing me pain, it's giving me a growth opportunity. And, I kind of use that as part of my story. And so with each thing that I'm recognizing in that second step, in terms of what am I thinking and why am I thinking it, I'm able to take that in after I've released the emotion through presence to it and change the story. Now, going back to that being present to the emotion, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, you can just be present, follow your breath, also helps. But the whole idea with presence, whether you're present to the feeling, present to the emotion, or present to the breath, you're not entertaining your story anymore. And that's why the emotion releases. If the emotion isn't getting fed by a story anymore, it's going to release. Okay. Now, once I've changed my story, then I practice presence as much as I possibly can so that I don't revert back into my story. And so I'll finish all these steps and get through that process where I have gotten to the point where I'm comfortable changing the story or what I'm telling myself. And then I'll just be present. And I'll use my senses. I'll feel and smell and taste and touch, listen, follow my breath, anything that I can do to stay present. But what that does is it completely takes me out of any kind of identification with the story that was causing the pain to begin with.
Yes. Yes.
So I know that was a lot, but because you're on tape, you can go back and listen to it again, um, because it is a lot. And I do want to offer up, if anybody wants to work with me one-on-one, they're welcome to call me and I can teach it to them, in a more one-on-one setting. And I'd love to do that. But one of the things I do know and I can attest to is I practice what I preach. And I've had a lot of stuff in my life. I'm 62 years old, and I got bit by a tick 15 years ago and got Lyme disease and have all kinds of symptoms that come from that. And I've had, a very painful loss in my life, and, just the everyday things that go on in people's lives. And, having these tools makes such a difference in terms of being able to transform and move through.
And Bonnie is amazing. I mean, I have had the opportunity to have, a lot of one-on-one conversations with her, and I have met a lot of people that have worked with her for different stages of their lives and have had amazing experiences. And I too, which is why I am creating this platform to have these conversations, because although I'm still, and again, this is a never ending evolution through our human experience. So it is really important, to recognize that everybody is going through a specific experience that is meant for their own specific purpose and journey. And I will tell you that I have had numerous losses in my life, whether it's through friendships, whether it's through my transitions to different cities, whether it's through family and friends, like actually transitioning to another dimension. I have had a significant amount of weight loss that has resulted in a lot of emotional weight loss,
Mhm.
because of, it's natural through life transitions and experiences for us to experience traumas that will oftentimes lead us to having very unhealthy attachment to experiences, and
Mhm.
then take it on to future experiences because we're still, and I believe that it's not just a physical weight that we carry oftentimes when we're going through a transformation process. It's these traumas that are embedded in our DNA. And
Mhm.
that's, I mean, it creates characteristics that oftentimes people cannot break. It's very difficult to break. But I will tell you that through my transformation, mind, body, and spirit, I will tell you that it is possible, especially implementing practices that Bonnie is talking about. The affirmations are so important because it's almost as though you're engraving those affirmations into your psyche. And you are really able to rewire your mind when it comes to the way that you respond to yourself. And if you are able to heal the relationship with yourself, first and foremost, um, you are really able to heal the relationship with everything in your life. And self mastery is so important, and it's a process that takes years. I'm 36 years old. It's hard to believe that I'm half Bonnie's age because she looks like she's so young. But in my 36 years of experience, I feel like I'm 75, really, with all the experiences that I've had. So yes, I'm so grateful that we are able to go through this experience because through education and through having these tools available to us, because oftentimes, even if we're going through where maybe it's not feasible for you to afford a coach, right? This is why we're having these free sessions here because not everybody has the disposable income to go and pay for one-on-one coaching. However, there we have we're in a new age. We're in the digital age now where so many resources are available to us. And we don't have to necessarily go to a coach, although it is very important for us to have that support system and to work with people that have these experiences and that have overcome and that are overcoming. But also to know that you are not alone in this process because every single person on this planet
Mhm.
going through something. And it may not look like your situation, but we can come together in these conversations and help each other evolve through the processes.
Well, and I would like to speak to that a little bit. So, because I have been practicing for 21 years, I have gotten to hear intimate details of so many people's lives and what they're going through and what they're experiencing and where their pain is and, the desire to relieve that pain. And you're right, everybody has pain. I think it's been a blessing to me to do this for a living because it made it really clear, oh, I'm not the only one that goes through that. We all go through things that we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't have to be human if we didn't have things that we need to heal. So if you're out there feeling like you're alone and you're the only one going through it, trust me, even the people that look like they're so confident out there, everybody's struggling with something. And so you're not alone. And like Rebecca said, there are so many resources out there to actually help you. Don't, when I hear somebody tell me that, their best friend is in pain or so and so is in pain, it breaks my heart because I know we don't have to experience the depth of pain that we have. For me now, after working on this for all these years, yes, I still have pain and things come up, but it's not the depth of pain that it used to be. I'm able to, catch it, be aware of it, be present to it, let it release, reprogram some of that subconscious programming, change the story, and get through that pain. And so, realize why I'm thinking that way, why I'm feeling this way. And again, not because my mom said such and such when I was 3, but again, those 5 things. I'm in pain because I don't think I'm enough. I'm in pain because I'm hating what is. I'm in pain because I keep fearing the future. And so, when we're able to kind of really be aware of all of those things, the awareness alone takes some of the impact out.
You have
But
such a point.
But you're right. Everybody's going through something. And so again, if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, ugh, I'm the only one, and something I hear on a regular basis is my mind's worse than everybody else's. Except for that, I hear that almost every day, which means that everybody feels like their mind is worse than everybody else's because everybody's mind is going blah, 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 all the time. And again, those emotions love to be fed with all that negativity. So it's like kind of is the emotions feeding the thoughts feeding the emotion, and it's just kind of hard to break.
I mean, the human experience is so interesting. Don't you agree? Because, I believe and I strongly believe that we all signed a soul contract and we waited in line for, I mean, centuries to have the opportunity to come to be born in planet Earth, right? Planet Earth is the most abundant planet in the universe and it has the most brilliant minds. But through the human experience, especially if, and I believe that every single person that walks through these doors, every single person that is alive on this planet is brilliant. We have 200 billion cells in our brain. And the average person is utilizing maybe 10%, which means that there is a lot of opportunity for growth and to activate different areas of our brain that can allow us to be great in every aspect of our lives. But every single person signed a soul contract, and every destiny is so different. But maneuvering through that journey is where we really find our greatness. And releasing the expectations and also accepting what is, and not comparing yourself to the next person, but being able to share these stories with each other so that we can help each other heal and to grow and to transform and to become the person that we were destined to be. And I believe that all of us have that ability.
Mhm. And it's better than sex. I had to giggle for a minute because I was thinking, do I want to say this out loud? But, but I feel, I mean, sex is great, don't get me wrong, but I feel that there is nothing more satisfying, more uplifting, more fulfilling than catching yourself going through some kind of a negative emotion and having that high enough level of awareness to be able to move through it and transform it and come out on the other end. To me, that is the most satisfying, gratifying, pleasurable, beautiful, fulfilling experience that we can have.
It is. It is. It really is like ecstasy when you are able to come to a self realization and recognize that you are enough as you are. And that when you are able to accept yourself for the brilliance that you are, where you are, as you are, and in this place that we're in right now, recognizing that everything is the way that it's supposed to be and that there's always a solution. There's always a solution when we can come to this very present moment, take a deep cleansing breath, and recognizing that your breath alone is literally the ability for you to completely reset your nervous system. And like, it's all you need. It's all you need to move forward. And attachments, it's so interesting because through this healing process that I've gone through, I'm healing my attachments with a lot of things. And we live in a very superficial world, and oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to even relationship in depth because we have this like we just have this expectation, these unrealistic expectations. And then we hold on to these fears of the possibility of like losing that person or
Mhm,
that thing. But last year, I went through the process of purging my entire life away pretty much, and purging out a lot of my material possessions. I kept my artwork, and a rack of clothes and some shoes and stuff. And those were some of the things that I held a lot of meaning to, but I didn't. I got to that point where I didn't feel defined by these things. I didn't feel defined by the people that were accepting me or the people that I was in relationship with. I recognized that really that I'm all I need, and that everything outside of me is just a reflection or an extension of what I am already. And so
mhm.
when we realize that, it allows our experiences to be a lot more fulfilling.
So true. And you know what? I want to say one thing in conclusion. There are no good attachments. None. People always, well, yeah, but what about this, Bonnie? Well, what about to how my kids behave? Well, what about how my spouse should behave? Well, what about this? What about how my employee should behave? There are no good attachments. Anytime you have an attachment, you are setting yourself up for pain, disappointment, difficulty in your relationships. You are also limiting yourself because when we are attached to how someone or something should be, we have blinders on. It should be like this, it should be like this, it should be like this. There could be a way better way over here or a lesson over here. Can't see it when you have an attachment. So all you have to do is catch your attachments. Be aware of that feeling, be aware of what you're thinking and the story you're telling yourself and why you think it should be the way you should think it should be. Get really present to the feeling, really feel it, allow yourself to release it, change the story, and then get present. And in doing that, you know what happens next? If there is an answer needed, it'll be right there and you'll have it. And you'll know exactly what you need to do in the moment you need to do it.
Yes.
And so you
Yes.
don't have to worry about figuring it out or what should I do. Just go through the process, release the attachment, be present, and the next thing you know, because presence connects you to all that is. That's where the answers are. Now you're connected. You get the answer. And so whether it's your employee, whether it's your child, whether let go of the attachment, get present, and you'll blow yourself away with what you know in terms of what you do next and how you proceed.
No, that is the best statement to conclude with, Bonnie. This has been such a healing session for me. It's been such a healing session for me. And I just, my hope and prayer is that regardless of what you got out of this, that you take a little nuggets or a few nuggets of wisdom and that you're able to apply this into your daily life because self acceptance is where it is in order for us to release those attachments that often are leaving us in bondage. So I
Yes.
see with this quote, you were put on this earth to achieve your greatest self, to live out your purpose and to do it courageously. And it's so much ease. So thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not done so yet. You have now the opportunity to share your energy by helping this channel circulate. So please share, subscribe, and you also have the opportunity to contribute energy of love to our PayPal account and all the description and on the description below, I will put Bonnie's information as well as ways for you to be able to contribute to this channel for it to grow. Thank you again so much, and we will see you soon.